Epoxy tables have a reputation for being unforgiving. You often hear stories about sticky surfaces, soft spots, or entire pores that never fully cured. And almost every one of those stories traces back to mixing ratios. In this video, we walk through epoxy mixing ratios the simple way. When an epoxy says it is mixed at a 2:1 or 1:1 ratio, it is a precise relationship between resin and hardener that allows the chemical reaction to complete properly. Think of epoxy like a handshake. If one side doesn't show up, the reaction never fully happens. Too much resin and the epoxy stays soft. Too much hardener and it can cure unevenly, become brittle, or overheat. The ratio exists because the manufacturer has already tested what works. Your job is to follow it accurately. One of the biggest beginner mistakes is assuming all ratios are measured the same way. Some epoxies are mixed by volume, others are mixed by weight. Those two are not interchangeable. A 2:1 ratio by volume means 2 cups of resin to 1 cup of hardener. But the same epoxy, if measured by weight, may not be 2:1 anymore because resin and hardener have different densities. This is where people get into trouble. Before you mix anything, check the manufacturer's instructions and answer one question clearly. Am I measuring by volume or by weight? Once you know that, stick to it for the entire project. Epoxy is not forgiving of estimates. Pouring close enough might work with paint, but epoxy doesn't operate that way. Even small errors can lead to problems that don't show up until hours or days later. The table might look fine at first, then it stays tacky or cures unevenly. This is why experienced builders rely on simple tools such as measuring cups, a digital scale, and enough time to mix carefully. Even with a perfect ratio, epoxy can still fail if it isn't mixed properly. Epoxy needs to be mixed slowly and thoroughly, not aggressively and not rushed. Scrub the sides of the container. Scrub the bottom. Mix for the full time recommended by the manufacturer. A helpful technique is the double cup method. After mixing in one container, pour the epoxy into a second clean container and mix again. This reduces the risk of unmixed material sticking to the sides. Epoxy mixing ratios don't change with temperature, but epoxy behavior does. Cold epoxy is thicker, harder to mix, and more likely to trap unmixed material. Warm epoxy flows better and mixes more evenly. This doesn't mean overheating your workspace. It simply means working within the manufacturer's recommended temperature range and allowing the resin and hardener to acclimate before mixing. Another quiet mistake beginners make is mixing very large batches early on. Large batches generate more heat, reduce working time, and magnify any small measuring error. If you are new to epoxy tables, smaller batches are safer. They are easier to measure accurately, easier to mix thoroughly, and easier to control during the pour. When epoxy ratios are off, the results are usually predictable. The surface may remain sticky, the epoxy may cure unevenly, or the table may feel solid at first but fail structurally over time. Epoxy mixing ratios don't need to be intimidating. Read the instructions. Measure accurately by volume or by weight. Mix slowly and thoroughly. Work within the right temperature range and keep your batches manageable.